Constitution was never a perfect document. It had shortcomings from the very beginning. It recognized the condition of slavery and various other things. But the founders were wise enough to allow the Constitution to be changed. So those who say, well, Ron Paul is overly rigid with the Constitution, no, I'm about where the founders were. I'm not overly rigid. I think the Constitution is good. We ought to follow it, change it when we want to, but the rule of law is important. We need to follow the Constitution. If we want to change it, we should change it in a particular manner. One example I use is as a period of time now where we've lost respect for the Constitution was at the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, the move was on to instruct all American citizens how to behave better by not drinking. Alcohol was bad, so therefore, and we know alcohol is very, very dangerous, and it still kills a lot of people. But a lot of very well-motivated people wanted to make sure that nobody ever drank alcohol again. And did they just go and start passing a law in Washington or a court just rule some interpretation and legislate through the court? No, they said we have to change the Constitution. And they changed the Constitution. It was a total disaster. Nobody really quit drinking alcohol. It was just turned over to the criminals. And a lot of people died from bad alcohol. And we know all the problems of Prohibition. And they repealed it. And it was a mistake, but they corrected it. But today, the approach is that they want to regulate what you eat and drink and smoke and take. You know, they don't even think about the Constitution. They just say, well, I know it's better for you not to do this. And pretty soon, it's good to the point. Matter of fact, it is approaching that point, and that is that they'll tell you precisely what food you're going to eat and how much you're allowed to weigh and how much exercise you're allowed to get in a certain day. And the totalitarian countries, the communist countries, did exactly that. That mentality still exists. But the process of recognizing that the Constitution should be changed. For instance, my personal position, and I think my correct constitutional position, is that the federal government should not be involved in public education. But you know, today, the polls may not support us on that position. They might say, well, the conditions are changed and this and that. And I say, well, if that's what this country wants, we ought to change the Constitution, because if we can ignore that, then there's nothing left of the Constitution. Quite frankly, I don't think there's a whole lot left to the Constitution currently. We have a Congress that passes laws willy-nilly, just on any issue they want. We have courts that legislate. We have an executive branch of government that for decades now has taken over the idea of writing laws. Every agency of government writes rules and regulations, the worst, of course, being the IRS. Writing a regulation is a law, and the Constitution prohibits anybody except the legislative body to write the law. So, and we have Supreme Courts making rulings. I think one of the worst rulings in the country for my personal beliefs as well as for the rule of law was when they heard Roe versus Wade. They should have never even heard that case. And yet they ruled, and the courts ruled, and they nationalized the law. By the way, the courts ruled, it said that any doctor can commit an abortion up to the day before birth. You know, that's a big event. But it was done the incorrect way, and of course it legalized total abortion. And my answer to that is difficult. There are difficult circumstances. There's disagreements on this. And the more difficult it is, and the more complicated it is, the more it ought to be local. The more it ought to be at the state level. And then if one state makes a mistake and not the other, it doesn't affect everybody. But if we let the Congress do some of these things, or the Supreme Court do it, then if they rule incorrectly, then we all suffer. So this was the genius of the founders, the way they put the system together. The separations of powers in Washington and the federalism allowing states to do most of what they should do in governance. But unfortunately, we have gone too far from that. Now, if we can take over the education education system, the medical care system, and the welfare system without changing the Constitution. We do other things as well that is even more harmful. And one of the key issues in the campaign